What's going on, everyone? So recently I did a video. It was a three-part series that kind of dissected the concepts of atonement found in the Old Testament. Specifically, I looked at three Hebrew words and their Greek equivalents found in the Septuagint, and how they pointed to a greater reality that was found in Jesus, and how the New Testament uses these three Greek words in reference to Jesus, and basically saying that he was the person or the high priest to perform the act of atonement, and that he was the new place where the act of atonement occurred and the means by which the atonement occurred. And thirdly, how Jesus himself was the sacrifice of atonement. But what, as I was studying this, I was really camping down on this second one, this idea of hilastērion. In the Hebrew, the word would be kaparet, and it was the mercy seat, or the atonement cover for the ark. It was made of pure gold, and it had two cherubs with their wings outstretched over it, and it was in the Holy of Holies. And it was significant for two reasons. Number one, it was the place where God met with humanity. It was the overlap of God's space and our space, specifically when he would meet with Moses and when he would meet with Aaron. It was essentially the seat of the presence of God. Secondly, it was also the place which and the means by which atonement occurred. Leviticus chapter 16, that's our famous chapter on the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, and it were specific instructions were given to the high priest on the blood of the goat and the blood of the bull, and how it was supposed to be sprinkled on and before this mercy seat, this atonement cover, right? And so when Paul is using this word hilastērion, this imagery of the place and the means by which atonement occurred had to be at the forefront of his mind, and so wanting it to be the forefront of his hearers and readers. And so we want to keep this focus in mind when we understand, what does that mean, though? What does hilastērion mean? Okay, you have this idea of the imagery of the place in which the atonement occurs and the means by which atonement occurs, but what's the meaning of it? And amongst scholarly circles, there are two camps normally: those who would say that it's expiation, and those who would say propitiation. And I'm going to kind of break that down. So expiation essentially means the wiping away, or the cleansing, or the forgiveness of sins. And it has the sin being the object in which what's being wiped away, or cleansed, or forgiven. And the other camp is propitiation. Propitiation essentially means the diverting, or the turning away or the removing of wrath. And so a lot of times these two camps are in opposition to each other. It's either this or it's this. And I actually think that's a false dichotomy. I think they're actually two sides of the same coin. It's because sins are cleansed, are wiped away by the grace of God, that the wrath could be diverted or turned away or removed. And a lot of times propitiation gets a bad rap because this idea of hilastērion was used in cultic circles outside of Judaism and Christianity, having to do with a sacrifice that an individual would bring to a particular deity. And it's often said that, well, we don't want to use propitiation because we don't want to say that God is in some way a vengeful God that is needing some sort of a sacrifice in the same way that a deity would be in some sort of pagan ritual. But we have to understand that, look at this. Okay, so in verse 25 is whom God put forward. So in ancient cultic circles, it was the individual who would bring forth the hilastērion, right? But here it's God who puts on public display the hilastērion. It's him who brings it forward. And this is interesting because it flips it on its head. What would normally be the case of the individual to bring it to God, is actually God who is the one who brings it to us. And as a result, again, going back to the Holy of Holies as the mercy seat, the atonement cover was in the place where the high priest could only go one time a year, and the veil was separating it from the rest of the community. But now, because of Jesus and his work on the cross, that veil has been torn from top to bottom, and what was only once accessible one day a year by one person is now put on. That's essentially what this word means. To put forward literally means to put on public display. And as a result of the work of the cross, the mercy seat, the atonement cover, the place which atonement occurs, the means by which atonement occurs is made available for all to see. And so again, expiation, the cleansing, the wiping away of sins, the forgiveness of sins is not in opposition to the turning away of God's wrath. Jesus is the place in which all of that happens. He is a place in which God and humanity meet. He is the place in which sins are cleansed and forgiven. He is a place in which the wrath of God is diverted and turned away. And I thank God for just the plan that was put in place, and the faithfulness. And I mean, this whole section, 21 through, I love to do more videos on 21 through 26, because I mean, this is just some rich, meaty stuff. And maybe I can do some more videos. Leave a comment, if you want for me to talk more about this little section of scripture. But I mean, it is so rich and so robust. And again, so Jesus is the new place, the place in which the act of atonement occurs and the means by which the atonement occurs. And because of his work, of his perfect work on the cross, we can have sins cleansed. We can have sins wiped away, sins forgiven, and as a result, the wrath of God, because he is a holy and just God, the wrath of God can then be diverted. And we don't have to have either or, we can have both and. Anyways, guys, that's all. Until next time, keep putting those puzzle pieces together. God bless.